So I have another video that shows you how to replace this character with a character from Maya. What I'm going to do in this video is we're going to replace this character with a character that we're going to make in Blender, which looks a lot like the other character. Now, just to kind of clarify where we're at in this series, in the last video we created some sliding doors. I took them out of here because I want to make another video that shows you how to make a little bit more advanced sliding door, which is really a sliding door. You press a key, which has a widget, and then you go inside and it shows another screen, which is an elevator. So stay tuned for that tutorial. So for now, let's go ahead and pause this and look at where we can download Blender. So here we are. This says blender.org. Go ahead and click the Download Blender button. I'm currently using 3.2.2. Run through the regular installation. You can actually get Blender for Mac as well, so don't worry too much about if you're concerned about that you don't have a PC. I tend to use a PC in my videos. What I'm going to do is go ahead and run Blender now. I'm going to assume that you know how to install the software. If you need help with that, please contact me and let me know. Alright, here we are in Blender. What I'm going to do to get rid of this Blender splash screen is I'm just going to click in the gray area over here by pressing the left mouse button. Now, a quick overview. Inside this center view here, this is essentially our perspective view. So if I click my middle wheel of my mouse in, I can rotate around. Up in the right-hand corner here, there's a scene collection. Really what this is this identifies all the objects that are in the scene. So I'm just going to hold the left mouse button down and drag this box of dots, which is called a marquee, around those three items, and then press the delete key on my keyboard. Down here is a lot of different tabs. They range from the modifier tab to how to set up materials and so forth. We will be using this quite a bit. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can add a 3D model to the scene. If you go up to the top here, you can hit Add, Mesh, and then add a cube. Now this cube, we'd like it to represent the head of our character. Now you might be wondering, well, how do I know how big my character is? Well, what we're going to do is go back to Unreal in a moment, and we're going to export out our character, and then we're going to import it into Blender, and that'll allow us to use that as a height reference. Right, so let's go to this little tab here called Properties, and let's go to Units here, and let's make sure that we're in metric, and that our length is in meters. All right, now let's return to Unreal. Here we are in Unreal, and you can see I have a folder here called Characters that's set by default. And inside of this folder, because we're using the UE5 sort of mannequin, you can go into Mannequins and then Meshes, and you can see here are the different ones. If I drag this into the scene, come on. Oh, it's waiting. We'll give it a second. I'll pause the video and let this update. Okay. I'm going to hit F to focus. You can see there is our character. So I'm going to right click on this, and you can see Asset Actions, and I'm going to go over to Export. And what I'd like to do is make sure that it's under FBX here. Now I'm going to pause the video, throw this on my desktop, and then return to Blender. Alright, here we are in Blender, and I'm going to go to File and then Import FBX, and then just navigate to your desktop and then grab that model. Mine was called SKM Quinn. And it's going to take a second to pop into Blender, and you can see the model is here. And we're going to be using this simply as a height reference for our character. So what I'd like to do is, with this cube selected, and the way I'm able to zoom in and out, forgive me, is I'm rolling the wheel in and out for my mouse. I'm clicking in my middle wheel to rotate. And if you find the Shift key on your keyboard and you click the middle wheel in, it'll allow you to pan. Now, we're not building anything that's particularly insane. We're just building our own little spherical character. And we're going to be doing that mostly out of cubes. So with this cube selected, you can go to Modifier panel here. And I can hit Control 1. And that'll add a subdivision modifier. Another way of doing that is if you click on Add Modifier here, you can see there's Subdivision Surface here. Now, I'd like to leave it pretty low. You could see under Renderer, it says 2. We'll get into that later. Under Viewport, it says 1. So 1 is to save time. Essentially, like level viewport is if you have a computer that's pretty low, you can increase the rendering subdivision. So when you go to render it, which is up here, So we have to go to render and then render image. And I'm not sure with no lighting, yeah, no camera, it's not going to render. Like I said, we'll get into that later. But for now, just make sure this is on 1. Now, the way to scale this up and move it is you can see there's these tools on the side. If you don't see them, press T like turtle, and that'll bring it in. And you can click your move tool here and just sort of move this up. And you can grab your scale tool here and then just click on this line. It'll scale it down. And we're just going to keep positioning this onto different parts of the character's body. So this is going to represent the head. Alternatively, if you press the S key, S like ski or Sam, you can also kind of freeform scale that. So I'm just clicking my middle wheel and doing this like that. Now I'm going to keep this shape here. So I can either hit Control A or click this little arrow here and hit apply. And all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to duplicate this a bunch and size it up. So if you hit Shift D, you'll notice that off in the right-hand side here, I'm going to hit Escape for a second. You can see it created another cube 1. And I can move this down, hit S to scale that up. You can also press G to move, and it does this very free-form moving. But for now, I want to keep everything on the center line. So this is the torso. I'm going to hit Shift D again. Just kind of move this up to the corner, hit S, scale this down for the shoulder, something like that. And I'm just rotating around. Because essentially what's going to happen is if I click this eye, I can hide this. But what we're going to do is we're going to be getting rid of this altogether. It looks like this didn't hide the root. We're going to be actually deleting this character. So I could actually press this and hit delete to show you. And we're going to be using these to rig our character. So I'm going to undo a couple times, bring this back. And I'm going to show you how to mirror in a second. So for now, just hit S. Let's actually hit, let's see. We'll stay inside of object mode for a second. And actually, you know what, something else that I'd like to show you is how I set up my hotkeys. So if you go up to here to edit and then preferences, and then go to input here, there's a couple things. If you don't have a side, you have a laptop without a side numpad, you can turn on emulate numpad. Something else I do is I go to key mapping here, and I always turn on tab for pie menu. And what that allows me to do is when I press the tab key, it opens these up for editing. There's also another option, I believe. Here, let me hit escape here, where if you press the tilde, it might come by default on a regular keyboard. Well, but the tilde is the key directly to the left of the 1. And when you press the tilde, it lets you do things like go to front view, and this might make it a little bit easier, right, to kind of navigate and move these around. So anyway, I'm going to hit Shift D here, move this down for an elbow, hit S to scale that down, and then Shift D again, Shift D again, there we go, and move it down here, clicking my middle wheel and just positioning this where the wrist goes. Again, this is not a character modeling class, it's more of a game design one. So if you're interested in character modeling, let me know. I've got a ton of videos on how to do that. All right, now I mentioned before that I wanted to show you how to mirror this. We're going to use this as our positioning point for how we mirror this. So with our shoulder selected, we're going to go back to our modifiers here, and we're going to add mirror, which is this right here. And then I'm just going to eyedrop my cube 01, which is the torso. And I'm going to do the same thing on each one of these. Add modifier, and then I'm going to mirror across here. Another way of doing this is you can add the mirror modifier. And if your scene is pretty, so let me just name this torso for a second. So I did that by double clicking it. But I can click here, and then in that mirror modifier, instead of clicking the eyedropper, if I click inside of there, you can see it shows me all of the stuff in my scene. Interestingly enough, it shows up the old cube stuff, but it doesn't show my torso mesh, which is kind of weird. Maybe we have to re-add our modifier. Let's see that. So I'm going to hit X and then add another mirror modifier. Let's see. Interesting. Well, let's click on torso here. Yeah, I mean, it still seems to work. Weird. All right, so again, we're just kind of creating our own little character here. What I'd like to do is I'm going to make a cube, and it's going to represent the bicep and the forearm. So I'm going to hit Shift A this time and go to Mesh Cube instead of adding a cube up here. And I'm going to hit S to scale this down. hit tilde, and I'm going to go to my front view. And I'm going to position this right, you know what, let's position this straight up. We'll make this the neck at first. So something like this. And then I'm going to tilde, go to front view, Shift D, move this into the shoulder area here. It has to scale that down just a little bit. And what I'd like to do is select this bottom face. So I'm going to edit this so that that goes inside of here. Actually, what I'd like to do is rotate it so that this blue line matches the direction, the normal direction of this arm. So I'm going to go ahead and select my rotation tool and click this little green arrow and just rotate it something like this. Now when I press G, you can kind of move it into place like this. Another way of doing this is if I hold Shift and Space, you can see I can select my move tool like that. And let's see. There's a couple different ways of adjusting this rotator. Right now it's kind of set to world. So if you click on this or global, we go to local, you can see here's our little blue locator there. So I'm going to hit S to move that down. Now let's edit this a little bit. So I'm going to hit Tab and I'm going to go to edit mode here. Now you can see that I can actually select a vertice, an edge. Here's an edge. If I hit G, you can see I can move that whole edge. Let's go back to vertex for a second. Grab that vertice, move it around. We're not going to get too into this. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. I'm going to select this face here. And now, if you can't see it because it's really hard to see inside of this, there's this little option here, which is X-ray mode, which you can turn on and off by hitting Alt-Z. So I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to move this over a little bit. Hit S to scale. I'm going to move this down a little bit. And then I'm going to hit Alt-Z. And then while I have this selected, I'm going to hit Tab and go to edit mode. And make sure that I press the number 3 or I hit select face. And all I'm going to do is, let's hit T if you want to bring this back. And then just move that down. And I'm going to hit S to scale that down just a little bit. And move it in this way. Now what's neat about this is you can do this as much as you want. So I'm going to hit Tab and go to object mode. It doesn't necessarily have to match the shape of this character. I'm just matching the height for now. So I'd like to actually get this point in the center of this object. So if I hit Control A, I can do all transforms and it'll reset the transforms to the center of the world. If I hit Control A again, you could see there's location, rotation, there's location to deltas. So that kind of clears out this stuff. So let's do that again. So all transforms to delta. You can see it zeroes this out, it cleans that out. Another way of doing this is if you go to, I think it's under your tool here, origin, you can move this down and just center that to where I want it to be. All right, I'm going to hit Shift D and then hit escape so that I don't move that again. And just sort of position that in the elbow region. I'm going to hit Alt C again so I can see that a little bit better. Hit S to scale that down. And then I'm going to select my rotation tool, click on this little red one here, and just rotate that. Let's press our G key, move that into place, or hit Shift Space and select Move, like that. So it takes a little bit of tweaking, Alt-C. Let's go to our vertex mode by pressing, let's hit Tab, go to Edit mode, press 1 for vertex mode, hit S to scale this down, hit S to scale this one down. And I'm just going to position that in place. So something like this. All right, let's tab over to object mode and let's add that mirror modifier again. And I'm going to select that same torso. Let's add another mirror modifier here. Like that torso. All right, let's grab the neck. Hit Shift D, and then I'm going to hit Escape and just move this down and scale this up so it becomes kind of like a rib cage. And we're just making like a little robot character of our own. And we'll add a little cut in here to kind of give it some shape. Let's select this, Shift D, and then hit Escape, and then move this down. This is going to represent our pelvis area. And same thing, Shift D, our knee, and then Shift D again, and I'm just going to hit Escape. I'm going to make the feet really straight this time. There's our ankle. instead of this kind of like off center thing. And then let's hit Shift D here, scale this. Now another thing you can do is hit, when you're hitting S to scale, you can scale on an axis. So if I hit S and Z, you can see I scaled that up. Hit S to scale this down a little bit. Again, we're going to keep our thing very robotic. Let's actually hit Shift D and then just kind of create a little hip character thing there, like a little hip bone. Hit S to scale that up a little bit. I'm going to move this over just a little bit, and then Shift D that again. Hit Alt Z, Tab, Edit Mode, and scale this down just a little bit, and then scale this down a lot more than that one. And we might want to move this back just a little. Let's see, Tab, Object Mode, grab this sphere, move it back. And don't be afraid if you have to do this tutorial a couple times. All right, let's grab this shin that we created. I'm going to hit Shift D, hit Escape, move it forward, and then I'm going to show you, we're going to edit this to make a foot. So Tab, Edit Mode, and then Alt Z so we can grab. So if you don't have Alt Z on, notice when I grabbed this, it missed, or it didn't have X-ray mode on rather. It missed this little vert here. So I'm going to hit Alt Z, grab this, hit Tilde, go to the right view, and just move this down here. Grab this, move this down here. This is where the back of the foot is. Let's move this down just a little bit. Now, what would be cool is if we can give this a little bit more shape. Well, and I'm going to keep my foot straight like that. In edit mode, you have all these tools here to add extra stuff. So you can see there's this thing called loop cut. So if I click on that and I hit cut there, notice that it created another face. So I'm going to hit escape to exit loop cut mode. Or actually, we can just hit G. And now we have a little face on the top. So we can actually select that top face here. And we can go to this other tool here, which is extrude. And we can extrude this up. And then I'm going to hit S to scale that down. And that kind of gives us a little bit more space. Let's hit G, kind of move that in. I'm going to hit R, just sort of straighten that out a little bit. So at this point, I can actually delete. So let's go, where's this character here? I can actually make this all visible, and I can delete it. Delete that character. And looks like the skinning is still there, so let's highlight that. And let's delete that, let's delete the root. And where'd that torso? Looks like it's still locked. Oh, let's go to object mode here. And let's get rid of that. There we go. Ooh, looks like there's a couple in here. I think those are all the LODs for it. Okay. So with these, what I want to do is I'm going to rig these so that each body part has sort of its own, it has its own joint chain. And we'll make a little like hand here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click, and actually we'll go to object, and let's see. I know the hotkey for this, but sometimes you use hotkeys so much you forget what's it called? Where the actual Control J is to merge, but I forget where. Oh, there, Control L. Oh, here we go. Join, Control J. So it's right here. And then what we can do, same thing as before, is we can mirror this across this pelvis. All right. And I mean, there are prettier characters. So for example, let's edit this for a second. And let's hit Alt C. I'm going to hit 1 for vertex mode. Let's scale this in a little bit here. Oops. Just make sure movement is on. Maybe even this, something like that. Like I said, it's our first demo sort of character. For the hand here, what I might do is Shift D and then just scale that up a bunch. Maybe what we'll do is hit R to rotate. And then we can grab that scale tool, kind of flatten it out. Just kind of moving it in place. It really should be more like this out here. Just kind of following the path of the hand or the arm. So just playing with moving and rotating and stuff like that. You can kind of scale that up a little bit more out like this. You know. All right, so we've got 2 legs here, but I don't want them joined. But we'll separate one from the other because we've mirrored that across. These are all kind of merged as well. So let's actually go ahead and apply this mirror. So I'm going to click on this and hit apply. And then what I'd like to do is tab edit mode. And then what you can do is hit L on each one of these pieces to select the whole piece. It looks like this might need to be moved over too. Let's go ahead and make sure we're in face mode too. And this. And then let's see, we can do. I think we can do separate. I think it's P. If we press the P key, it's selection. And now that's a separate thing. I think it's under here too. Mesh, separate P. Okay, so now if we hit tab and we go to object mode, you can see now we have 1 leg and then 2. Did it make a copy? Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess let's just, select all of these and then just delete it. You can do that by hitting delete or hit X, and then you could just do delete. I guess faces are good. And then now we should have 2 different legs. Do the same thing again, and we'll try a different selection method maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and, with all of those selected, I'm going to go ahead and accept mirror, so apply. And then I'm going to hit my Control J. Oops. Looks like not all of it here. Let's say Control A. We'll go down this whole thing, Control A, to make sure my mirror is all in place. All right, Control A. All right, let's go ahead and join these with Control and J. And then let's try one more time. So let's go to edit mode, and I'm going to hit L on each one of these pieces. And then let's hit P. And then I think try loose parts. No, that's not. I guess it is selection, but it seems to make a copy when you do that. Oh, actually, this time it did not do that. Interesting. All right, so there's 2 arms, there's our 2 legs, and then let's go ahead and join the torso, Control J, and then the head and neck, we'll do Control J. So now we have a really generic character. What we'll do in the next video is we'll start to rig them.